Hello. My name is Nan, and you're on the Absolute Cinema Show. Here we get unseriously curious about cinema, what happens in it, around it, and to us as audience, fans, and lovers of cinema, and of course, have fun while at it. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to say this show is sponsored by absolutely no one. It's just me வேலை வெட்டி இல்லாம சின்ன வயசுல ரொம்ப சினிமா பார்த்து கெட்டு போனதுனால இப்படி புலம்பிட்டு இருக்கேன். So yeah, bad jokes aside, we will go into today's topic. Today we're going to talk about a phenomenon that I think is plaguing Indian cinema right now, that is hype. So today we'll talk about what is hype, how is hype created, does hype ruin enjoyment or not? So what is hype? How I think of it is hype is like a spectrum of awareness. I sound like a SaaS marketer. I hate that. A spectrum of awareness or a scale of awareness nu solla. A movie says brought into existence, right? Like when I say brought into existence, most likely it's announced. Sometimes we get to know of it before also, so leave that. But okay, a movie is announced, so we become aware of it. I feel like after that we become interested. After that we get excited about it, and adukku mela we start having expectations of it. Let me break this down. So first a film is announced on Twitter, right? And then we are like, oh apriya, great. And then we are aware of it, and most times we scroll past it, we let it go. But then there are times when a movie is released and then I would be like, oh, it's this actor or this music director, and then I go Google, or I click the link, click the profile, and then I try to learn more about it because I'm interested. Adukapro the next stage of that would be, oh, this is so exciting, I will start posting about it, I will reshare, I will send it to all my friends, I will engage in news around it. That I would still say is excitement. Adukapro on the vara stage irke, where we start discussing about the film, we start theorizing the possibilities of, it's going to be this look, it's going to be this actor's etana of the film, all of that we start talking about is like the expectations of it. The most recent example I can give is this Andavar Superstar film that was announced. For that, I just went from aware to directly excitement. Interest in ஒரு ஸ்டெப்பே இல்லை, because of course it's Andavar and Superstar and all of that. So I started sharing it with my circle, posting it on stories. Soon after that first look released, we started decoding it, right? Even I was also doing that. I was like, on the A and H is highlighted, so adi yaar hero yaar villain, and that was even the hook of the first look. Then I tweeted something about what their character names would be, and then I was like, who will be the female leads for them, which old dialogue or look would they recreate, and all that good stuff. Now that's just me, I was doing that, and like me there is you, and like us there are so many more people doing it. So when there's a lot of people doing it and we keep hearing about it, and there is, it just slowly increases in volume of how many people are doing it. I think that's when it becomes our topic, hype, right? Why it's newer phenomenon, why hype is becoming such a thing, Niketa? It's most obvious, we all know, social media. That is why.
Chitra Arvindan, social media.
என்ன ப்ரீ இன்டர்நெட் எரால ஹைப் அப்படின்ற ஒரு கான்செப்ட் இல்லையா அப்படின்னா, when I was growing up I remember a lot of time much anticipated magnum opusன்னு நிறைய I've heard, mostly for Shankar films, and then I remember Dasavataram was one such thing. But all of this, as far as I remember, it was for some like marquee films that had something new, something flashy, the cast was different. Of course they also spent a lot on promotions and stuff, the infamous Jackie Chan coming for audio launch. That was just these handful of bigger budget films, right? But most of the other films had a typical trajectory of the padam will get made, there is a release, and then it becomes a hit by word of mouth. The other aspect is, idukku munnadi did fan theories and these discussions and all didn't exist anu keta? I think it did. There were a lot of fan theories for, I think, Star Wars, Star Trek type films, Marvel movies, comics, and things like that. But to this extent, as we see today, to this volume and intensity, I don't think so, because it was in papers, it was in magazines, there were people who were dedicated to writing about this. It was not so many of us doing it. So it's quite simple. The circulation of information was slower, and இப்போ it is amplified. Social media there is a knack of exaggerating everything, right? Social media appreciation na or extreme, trolling is another extreme. So obviously I think hype also, there is an extremeness to it. That is the phenomenon that we are seeing, and it's a very interesting phenomenon, and that is why I want to get curious about it and what it is doing to cinema and how we interact with cinema. Next I want to talk about how this hypery is created. why this hype for ED. But yeah, how this hype is created. I don't think social media is causing the hype, right? It is just a medium, it is just causing the intensity of it. But what generally causes hype, even in a pre-internet era or even now, probably back in the day, it was not called hype, it was called anticipation, which is much anticipated, expected, அந்த மாதிரி. Now there is a term because everything in social media has a term. மூணு category roughly I can say. ஒன்னு organic, which is basically an actor, a star is part of it, who is the music director, combinations of this, a type of genre of film, a type of look that the actor is playing. These things, there are many more. But what this is, it is not necessarily curated. It is just is, or it's a coming together of it that is reason enough to stir excitement. அது first. ரெண்டாவது வந்து promotional, of course, which is reveal, the title, the teaser to the title to the teaser to the first look, all of that. In recent times, the most popular வந்து the Nelson Ani intro of songs that they do. But basically, இதெல்லாம் என்னன்னா ஒரு curated or created content would be promotional. The விதம் I see is fandom. அது வந்து, the speculation, the memes, the content, theories, conspiracies, rumors, leaks, even Bharadwaj Rangan's top 10 movies, அதெல்லாம் வந்து ஒரு fan generated. It's also, I mean, I wouldn't say just fan, it's also audience generated. Why this distinction is important அப்படின்னு பார்த்தா, for example, இப்போ me as someone who's recording any piece of content, I may not necessarily be a fan of this movie or this star, but I will talk about it to stay relevant or to comment on it. I will make memes about something that I'm not too invested in, but that's just how social media works. So I would call this third category audience generated. Ultimately, they are also fans of cinema, or they are just chronically online. Could also be that. So இதான் மூணாவது ஒரு fan / audience generated. Some examples எப்படி இது create ஆச்சுன்னு, like from my personal இது few movies I wanted to talk about. ஒன்னு வந்து Devara, when it was announced, I saw that it was Anirudh music, and then I was very excited about it. Then I started reading up about it. Then it became anticipation. I learned that Ani was in Telugu cinema after 5 years, and there's some lore behind it, and I was very curious. Adukapro, any release information that came, I was sort of anticipating it. There was this Janvi Kapoor, there was Saif Ali Khan, all of that. It was also NTR's film after RRR, so there was a lot of expectation. So it is not just this one thing, but a few of these things together, it made me hyped for the idea of the film, because I was hyped, but it wasn't enough for me to go watch it. So that was one interesting phenomenon. But I'm obsessed with that album. That's pretty much it. The second one, in no particular order, second thing that I thought about was Vikram. Vikram, I think, for many reasons, will go down in history as a film that created many of the hype trends that followed in Tamil cinema, and so, even beyond. Even till date, people are milking that thing for hype, which is one, cameos. Unfortunately, the leak that happened with Vikram, I was very sad for the film. I wish I didn't know about Rolex before I went in. Adonna. The tweet that Lokesh put out the eve of the release, which he said, brush up on Kaidi, which was very cool. Like at that point, it was never done before. And I feel that was the initiation to LCU. I mean, not for Loki, of course, he probably had it in his head, but that was one of the things that brought out cinematic universe in such a big scale, and how it's like beaten to death now. So I think Vikram was another thing where there was a lot of hype around it, and a lot of hype mechanics, which is still used today. And the last one I can think of right now, there are so many more, but idla vandu Leo, which came right after, in Lokesh's filmography, it came after Vikram, right? Leo la vandu, there were many reasons. Organically pata, I think the actors, it was a Vijay film, it was Vijay Loki coming together. Loki, there was a lot of expectation. It was Ani music, and of course it was the reunion of Vijay and Trisha, which is now, we won't talk about that. So all of these things organically made me very excited about the film. And then promotionally, everything that they did, the launch and stuff, the puja that they did, and the the stills that released were very quite interesting. So promotional vanduchu. Thirdly, the fan or audience generated content பார்த்தா, இந்த படம் ஒரு ரீமேக்ன்ற ஒரு rumor started, and right now I can't recollect if Loki denied or accepted it, but eventually it was a history of violence based off there was talk around town. And I remember reading on Reddit or some forum where someone had watched History of Violence, and they basically described what happens in it. I didn't watch History of Violence till date, but on the theory பார்த்துட்டு I started having expectations of, oh, Vijay இப்படி பண்ண போறாரா, Vijay அப்படி பண்ண போறாரா, on the scene, like where there's a reveal of something would be like this. Now I had anticipation and expectations in my head, and then we know what happened with Leo, especially second half. I think this is how hype is created. I don't know, I'm very curious if I've missed out on any categories in which hype is created, but these are the three broad ways I could think of. And before I talk further, I wanted to play a Kutti soundtrack or some clip that I enjoy. ரொம்ப பேசிட்டேன். So I don't know if I'll even keep this in the final, but it's something I'm trying. பார்க்கலாம், but here you go. So the reason I spoke about my interpretation of what hype is, how it's created and all of that, I want to set that context to then basically dig in about the effects of hype culture or this phenomenon on cinema itself. Hype is causing a shift in how we do movies. When I say do movies, I mean how we watch them, how we make them, how we promote them, how we consume them, how we archive them even. Whether it's good or bad, I don't want to get into that. I don't think it's even relevant for this discussion. I'm just merely observing how it is taking shape because I like cinema and this phenomenon is so in my face, it's hard to ignore. I want to, probably talk about a couple of ways in which I'm seeing the effects of hype on cinema. In the first steps எல்லாம் தாண்டி வந்து aware, interest, excited, அப்புறம் expectation stageல பாத்தீங்கன்னா I feel like there's an echo chamber of like fan theories and like decoding the trailer, poster, எத்தனை Reddit rabbit holes I've gone in. But there is, it all creates a noise that it becomes sort of impossible for a new film to match any of that. Because now it sort of amplifies or creates more distance between what the film is versus what it could be. In fact, it puts what it could be first and then the what film is, if it makes sense. What I mean by that is, I have so many ways in which the film will play out in my head already. And then I read more of other people's interpretations of it. And it's almost now this complicated web of so many permutation combinations that this unreleased film has these expectations and they have to meet all of that. Earlier films were trying to beat box office, not even earlier, they still are. They're trying to beat box office because this, that, but they're also trying to meet the hype-led expectations. Adu onnu. Innonu vandu, I feel like this is the most annoying effect of hype for me personally. Again, not saying it's good or bad, but for me it's annoying, which is how sometimes these makers try to engineer this hype. Okay, like promotional mattu illama, they try to make it seem like this hype is coming organically or it's coming from fans and it's just, it gives a little desperation, to be honest. I'll give an example, like when they do cameos but they reveal it. Most recently I think Basil Joseph in Parashakti was one I can think of, Amir Khan in Coolie. Because the entire point of you doing a cameo, bringing an actor to do a cameo, is part of promotion. You're doing it because you know that will work. It works for the film. It's like a nice mass moment. That is the entire point you're doing it. So if you reveal it to me pre-release, I feel like you're taking it away from me as a fan to enjoy it as a jump surprise, if I may. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like it defeats the whole point. When some of these things happen, I'm like, you're just doing it for the trend. And the same lines, hype causes a lot of trends. Pan India, cinematic universes, crore clubs, and cameos also. But you're just overdoing it. It just feels like people should know when to draw a line or stop. Because if it's okay till you're doing like teasers, trailers, all of that. But when you cut a trailer, it's still like there is great craft about cutting the trailer. That's still exciting for me. The music or the BGM that would be, all of that. But if you're cutting it to reveal everything and you're engineering this hype or trying to create hype, it's not so enjoyable. I think இன்னொன்னு வந்து ரீசெண்டா ஏதோ ஒரு பாலிவுட் ஃபிலிம் பேபி ஜான் வேர் I think Salman's cameo was revealed. Okay, and I was so disappointed when I saw that in the trailer because for me it was like Teri remake. I'm an Atlee fan. That was great. That movie also had like there are Varun Dhawan fans. Kirti Suresh was acting in Bollywood. Atlee was having like an increasing fan base in Bollywood. So it had a lot going for itself that you didn't have to reveal this. If I had watched it in the theater, imagine even more surprise, and then people come out and then it becomes talked about. It's fine. So I feel like that is my gripe with hype. Gripe with hype. இன்னொன்று வந்து அதே மாதிரி effects-னு பார்த்தா இந்த post production pre-release interviews, events, and the whole marketing thing that these people go around town doing, it seems like they are tooting their own horn. I love that you believe in the film, but I think you should just leave it to wait and watch or say a little bit. Again, hold back, power back a little, know when to stop. Most famously, எனக்கு இதில் அடிப்பாங்களான்னு தெரியல, but நான் சொல்கிறேன், which is Premji before Goat. I was very excited for Goat because it was Venkat Prabhu and like his team along with Vijay and all of that. But what he said was a little like too much. And then infamously again Nagarjuna at the Coolie event and many other interviews for a lot of the films that released last year. I think this happens because ஒன்னு hype ஏற்கனவே இருக்கு, and hype is a little contagious. So they are forced to say these things, or they are asked these pointed questions because media houses from their end want that content. They want to be the first one to report it, this, that. So they kind of ask that. So I feel like a little more media training or some crisis control needs to happen there. And the other one is hype இல்லாத படத்துக்கு யாருடா hype பண்ற மாதிரி some people talk. பட் அது அவ்வளவா நான் பார்த்ததில்ல. மேபி பிகாஸ் hype இல்லாத படத்துக்கு நான் இன்டர்வியூஸ் அவ்வளவும் பார்த்ததில்லைன்ற மாதிரி. And one more thing, they might not even say it to cause hype, but we get hype for it. அவங்க ஹார்ம்லெஸ்ஸா சொல்லிட்டு போயிடுவாங்க. அதை நான் வந்து ஐ வில் பி லைக், ஓ இது அப்படி மீன் பண்றாங்க போல அப்படின்னு. தக் லைஃப்ல திஸ் ஹேப்பன்ட் a lot where Trisha was of course I think facing her relationship with Mani Ratnam, and she has done this a lot in other interviews also, but in this one I think she was still saying it the way she usually says it, but people were like, oh my god, which means she's going to do something out of the ordinary, it's going to be something new. Around the same time Baby Daddy, no, Sugar Baby released, and I put one and one together and made it 4, and I was like, oh my god, it's going to be Trisha who's the star of the show. So yeah, then it creates these expectations. I create it, so I'm my own problem, Martha. And then again, we are doing this en masse, so that is sort of so much expectation. Which brings me to expectation itself. Like, can expectation hamper perception? Let's start from the pre-internet era. I hear magnum opus, so there is a little bit of minute expectation I have going into a film. It is a little one-dimensional at best. Now there is so much hype. I have all these versions, all these expectation times 100 that this film is supposed to meet. And it's like an Asian child. All these expectation, all dumped on it. So anything this movie is going to do would not match the version that is in my head and so many other people's heads in different ways. So that's what I mean by that is one dimension. This is like so complex web of expectation. The related to this, the most interesting thing that happens is with the theater and OTT release. We hear it a lot. Theater ஓட்ட படம் OTT நல்லா ஓடிச்சு, or vice versa. People enjoy it in the cinema, so there's expectation for it to be good, and that's the word of mouth that goes around. And when it releases on OTT, everyone's like, இதுல என்ன இருந்துச்சு, or it didn't do well in the theaters, and then they're like, இதுல என்னடா இல்ல அப்படின்ற மாதிரி. I think Mayaragan had that. I couldn't watch Mayaragan in theaters because it was not playing where I was living, and by the time it released on OTT, there was talk around it, and when I watched it, I was like, why didn't this become a hit? It's like a Mandela effect, but I think it's not Mandela effect, but adu madri this needs a name. One big disclaimer is there are exceptions and outliers to all of this. I'm saying with expectation. There are people who feel the opposite of general consensus. They just didn't voice it enough, and it just doesn't become part of the social media noise. It happens to me too. When I'm in the theater and I watch something, I feel a certain way enjoying the film. But by the time I come out and I read news about it, tweets about it, I'm a little jaded. It happened most recently with Madarasi. Watch a night show or something like that, and I didn't want to see any news, nothing. I kept my sanctity and I watched it. During the film, I really enjoyed it, but for some reason, I was like, if I go read up and then this is going to get jaded, so I quickly noted down everything I felt and I posted it. That's how the perception purity I try to keep intact and not let it get affected by noise. It also brings me to a question, which is, low expectation na better perception அப்படின்னு அப்படிதான் it feels, at least at this point. So shouldn't we be banking on it? If I was a filmmaker, I would be like, no, let's not create any noise அப்படின்னு. It's hard, I understand, because as a filmmaker, maybe they feel that way, and then the production house wants to create noise around it. But I guess that is the power of quick gratification, which social media makes it so easy and like creates head hype நால கெடாத படம் இருக்கா? Are there any films that didn't suffer the fate of hype? அப்படின்னா Jailer comes to mind. I do think it had decent hype. Maybe people were a little cautious because of and also the audio launch கொஞ்சம் அடி விழுந்துச்சு.
30 வாட்டி வந்து காபி சாப்பிட்டு நல்லா இல்லாம.
But again, it was superstar after all, so hype was there for sure. I think it did really well. I watched it twice back to back in the theater and then some. But what happened after is very interesting because the Nelson hype graph went up, and it has brought us to the karuthu. What is I'm saying nu paatha, hype நல்லதில்லன்னு சொல்லல, நல்லா இருந்தா நல்லா இருக்கும் தான் சொல்றேன். Personally, I'm going to practice willing suspension of expectation. I don't know if it's possible because I don't think I will not get hyped. I will definitely engage in all hype machines. I will create them myself in my head, hopefully outside also. But when I sit in the cinema and the lights go off, I'm hoping to watch the film for what it is than what I want it to be. That much I think I owe to cinema, and I will keep you posted if you will listen. So thank you for coming this far. It means so much that you listen to me ramble. Even if you skipped ahead and came here, it's okay. I will meet you on the next one. We came this far, no? This is like an optional, I'll be honest, it's a very optional segment. I will get even more academic, if I can say, like slightly academic and technical.
It's getting too technical.
If you're listening to this, if you quickly Google, and if you're watching this, I might put it here, but if you quickly Google Gartner's hype cycle. So, enna idu or graph, okay, with time on the x-axis and visibility on the y-axis. This hype cycle was earlier created, it's Gartner, so it was created for technology, emerging technology, and how they move along the cycle from when a feature is or a technology is announced to the expectation to the launch. I could be so off in this comparison, but I did draw parallels to the hype cycle. If you're an audio learner, this will hope this registers very well for you. Or I hopefully post it as a reel so you can watch it. Now, the step one, the film is announced. That is the trigger. So there is a rise in visibility, the trailer, teaser, announcement, all that happens. And then it all, like, நம்ம சொன்ன மாதிரி எல்லாம் போய் ஒரு peak of inflated expectation. எப்படி ஹைப்பின் உச்சம் அந்த உச்சத்துல இருக்கு. That peak, I would call it the movie's release, and then there is a dip to what is called the trough of disillusionment. So in the reviews, expectation mismatch, something happens, so many factors are there because of which it sort of dips. And I think higher the climb, higher the dip, of course. And there is a dotted line I'm adding in my own version if it is almost a threshold, because films that are not too hyped, I don't think will follow this. So that one thing is there. But anyway, most films that hype and then they go down and all of that, and then they sort of stabilize. Once they stabilize, this last part I added a little more. My take is they go into the cinema archives, right? Like any cinema that is released after 2-3 months or even a year, it goes to a status. One of these statuses, I think, one, it becomes highly celebrated, it's a hit. Then it becomes a cult classic, which means it was not appreciated, now in the future it's appreciated. So there are many ways a cult classic can become. Maybe it's another topic for another episode. And the other one, there are people who are divided about it. People really like it or people really hate it. And the last one is furniture. It goes down in history as like a bad film. Eventually it might even go up and become a cult classic, like Ayrathil Oruvan was one, I think. I don't know if it was too much of furniture because social media was not so rampant, but nobody liked it, but now it's like a cult classic. That can also happen. Same way, another recent furniture is Kangua, I would say. I also didn't enjoy it too much. இதுதான் என்னோட கார்ட்னர் ஹைப் சைக்கிளோட representation, but it's hype culture in cinema. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you like this segment, I would love to hear more about it and nerd out with more folks who enjoy something like this. Thank you.